Hi, and welcome to my second tutorial in this series. The first episode dealt with creating a simple non-animated but effective lower third. The intro and outro consisted of simple fades. In this episode, I want to take it a little further by introducing some animation for the intro and outro. This is the lower third I'll be creating. To save time, I've made a note of all the settings and I'll use these to aid me in its recreation. Before I start, I need to point out a couple of things. All frame values are for the PAL TV system. That's 25 frames per second. Timings will be different for other TV systems, so the frame values may need adjusting to suit. The location and size parameters are for full HD. That's 1920 by 1080. Other formats will require these parameters modifying to suit. You'll need 4 tracks for this one. I've already got a video event on the timeline. This will be the event that the lower third describes. I've temporarily muted the track so the video doesn't distract. I've already created another 3 tracks, so I'll deal with the text background strip first. I need to place a coloured event onto track 3 for this background strip. This can be either a colour or a gradient. I'm going to choose the sunburst gradient. Now these default colours don't appeal to me, so I need to make some changes. In this media properties, I first want to select node 1, which was this one. It's a little difficult to see, but the border of this node will flash blue when it's selected. I'll now change the parameters as follows. We'll leave the aspect ratio at 45.3 and leave the distance at 0.023. Now I need to change the colour. So I'll leave red at 255, put the green at 27, and the blue at 88. Now I need the background strip to be semi-transparent, so I'll change the alpha channel value to 128. Now I need to select node 2. This one. I think that's flashing. So we'll change these parameter values again. Leave the aspect ratio at 45.3. The distance at 0.547. So the red now should be 129. The green at 0. And the blue at 242. And I'll leave the alpha channel at 255, which is maximum opacity. Now I think the crosshair needs leaving as it is, so we'll just have a look at that. That crosshair is flashing now, and it needs to be in the middle. Final thing is to change the duration to 7 seconds. As I've said before in my other tutorials, 7 seconds is a nice value for a lower third. I'll close that down and bring this event back to the loop point. I now need to scale this event down using track motion. If the track motion icon isn't showing, open up the hamburger menu, that double click there, so it's the edit visible button set. I'll just do that again. Bottom option, edit visible button set, and put a check mark in track motion. That will put up the track motion icon on the tracks. So I need to scale this one. Open that up. Make sure the cursor's at the beginning of the event, which it is. And I will change these coordinates to suit. So the X coordinate needs to be minus 1929. The Y coordinate I need to be minus 378.46. The width stays at 1920 and the height changed to 101.54. So that's the scaling of the strip done, the background strip. Now at the beginning of the animation, the strip will be off the screen, as you can see here. I want this background strip to complete its movement onto the display in 15 frames. So I will move the cursor 15 frames and add a keyframe. Just open up this controller timeline so we can see it better. At this point I'll change the coordinates to x equals minus 193.88. The y coordinate will be minus 378.46. The width I want to stay the same and the height I want to stay the same. I'll just check that that works okay. Right. I now need to do the opposite at the end of the event. So I'll go to the end of the event and I need to move back 1 frame and add a keyframe. As I've mentioned in my other tutorials, it's not a good idea to place a keyframe right at the end of the event. You should always come back 1 frame and place the keyframe there. I'll now go to the first keyframe and I will copy that keyframe, right click, copy, then go to the last keyframe and paste. Now to get to the start of the outro animation, I need to move back from the last keyframe 15 frames and add a keyframe. I can now go to the second keyframe and copy that, and go to the third keyframe and paste. We can now check that works okay. That's the intro, and that's the outro. One thing I will do before I go any further is to change this preview quality to preview half. That just makes sure that the animations run smoothly. I now want to create the slanted end on this background strip. I'll close this down, and I need the Vegas Deform tool applying to this event. That's opened up on the other screen, so I'll have to pull that across, sorry about that. Now in the parameters I need to set the amount to 1 and the horizontal shear I need to be minus 0.050. As you can see, that's not quite right. To correct that, I need to take this check mark out of center image, leave all the other parameters at default. You can just check the animation again. Okay. Now I want to create the supplementary strip that runs at the top of the background strip. I need a second media event on track 2. This can be any colour of your choice, but it needs to contrast with the background strip. I'm going to use white. I will change the duration to 7 again. And now I need to rescale this event using track motion. With the cursor at the beginning of the event, I'll change these values. X will be minus 1929. Y will be minus 317.5. The width will remain the same, 1920. And the height will be 18.46. Now I want this strip to start moving onto the display 5 frames after the background strip has stopped. So I'll move the cursor 20 frames and add a keyframe. This will be the start of the animation for the thin strip. Again, this animation period will be 15 frames. So I'll move the cursor a further 15 frames and add a keyframe. Now this is the end of the animation, so I need to change the position coordinates. The X will now be minus 175.8. The Y will stay at minus 317.50. The width will stay at 1920 and the height will stay at 18.46. Now, as with the background strip, I need to repeat this animation in reverse at the end of the event. I'll go to the end of the event and come back one frame and add a keyframe. I'll now go to the first keyframe and copy, and go to the last keyframe and paste. As at the beginning, I need to now come back 20 frames. And add a keyframe and paste onto that keyframe. The supplementary strip, that's the white strip, will exit the display in 15 frames. So I've now got to come back a further 15 frames and add a keyframe. If I now go to the third keyframe and copy, and back to the fourth keyframe and paste. I'll now check the animation. Good. Now for the slant at the end of the supplementary strip. Now the parameters for this will be a little bit different because of the difference in sizes of the strip. We want the amount to be 0.474. The horizontal shear is minus 0.019. And again, take the check mark out of the center image. Now you can see that's made a nice job of the slant on the end. Lastly, the scene text string. I'll place a titles and text event on track 1. Change the duration to 7 seconds. I'll choose Times New Roman as the font and font size 14. I now need to position this text at the right place, so I will use the location dialog. Fine-tune this with a control. And now with this text, I want this end of the text to stay there no matter how long the text is. So to do that, I need to change the anchor point from center to center left. Now I can make this string as long as I want, up to here, without it moving. Now with this text, I want it to fade in after both the elements have moved onto the screen, and fade out before the elements move off the screen. To do that, I need to open up the keyframe controller for the color and also the outline, because I need this font to be outlined. Now if I move the cursor to the beginning of the timeline, at this point I want the opacity of the text and the opacity of the outline to be 0. So I will change the alpha of the text to 0 and the alpha of the outline color to be 0. But I also need the color of the text to be yellow. I'll pull that down there. And I need the color of the outline to be black. And the outline width to be 4. Okay, so that's what it's like at the beginning of the timeline. Now I know that both strips take 40 frames to fully extend onto the display. So I need to add another 10 frames to that before I start exposing the text. And I will add a keyframe there. Let me just move this out of the way a little bit so I can see the time value here. Now what I should have done is to come back 10 frames there and added a keyframe. So that's the start of the fade in. I'll go to the next keyframe and I will change the opacity to 1 and the opacity of the outline to 1. Now I need to go to the end of the event, come back 1 frame and add a keyframe. Again, I need to come back 40 frames. And add a keyframe, and then 10. And add a keyframe. Now at this point the text will start to disappear. At this point it will have disappeared. So I need to copy this keyframe and paste it there. I also need to copy this keyframe and paste it here. I can see something wrong there. We haven't got a keyframe there, and that is because I didn't have this row highlighted. So I'll have to correct that now. Create the keyframe, copy that, and paste that there. Now let's see if that works. Yes, it does. I can now select all these events and move them into position. You'll notice that the track keyframes move with it, and change the text to reflect the scene. Unmute the video and play. For Vegas Pro users, if you save the project with a meaningful name, it can be copied multiple times with a different name, so that it can be incorporated in your project multiple times for each scene you want to describe. I explained how to do this in tutorial 27 part 1. For Movie Studio Platinum users, nested timelines aren't supported, so I'm afraid you'll have to create the lower third on your project timeline. The good news is you can copy the complete lower third and paste it onto your project timeline as many times as you need. I describe how to do this successfully in my tutorial 27 part 2. So, that's episode 2 of this series completed. You'll appreciate that because subsequent episodes deal with increasingly complex titles, the duration of these episodes will increase as well. If you're up to it, join me for my next tutorial, when I'll introduce an image into my lower third. I'll also demonstrate a different method of animation. Until then, bye for now.